There is a building in China so large that you could fit the Pentagon inside it roughly 3 times over, and then still have room left to spare. Pentagon is the largest office building in the United States, with almost 30,000 people working inside it every single day, and next to this thing in Chengdu, it looks like a side room. But the size is not even the strangest part. Inside this building, there is an ocean. Not a pool, not a pond. A full indoor sea with rolling waves, a sandy coastline that stretches on for hundreds of meters, a lazy river, a full-size pirate ship, and an artificial sun hanging from the ceiling that keeps the water warm and the sky permanently blue, even when it is freezing and gray outside. This is the New Century Global Center, and it sits in a city more than 1,000 kilometers from the nearest real coastline, in a province most people outside Asia have never had a reason to think about. If you are enjoying this already, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a video like this one. By the time this video is over, you will understand how an indoor ocean this size actually works, why a landlocked city decided it needed one, who built it, and what happened to that man before he ever got to see his own building open to the public. The building, the ocean, and the backstory are all stranger than they sound. Let's get into it. The scale of this place does not register right away, and your brain will try to push back on the numbers the first time you hear them. The New Century Global Center sits in the southern part of Chengdu, in China's Sichuan province. It is 500 meters long, which is roughly 5 American football fields laid end to end. It is 400 meters wide. It rises 100 meters into the air across 18 floors. And when you add up every one of those floors, stacked and combined, you get a total floor area of 1.7 million square meters, which is what earns it the official title of the largest building on Earth by floor space. To put that into something you can actually picture, imagine a regular American shopping mall, the kind with a food court, a multiplex cinema, and a couple of big anchor department stores. Now imagine roughly 40 of those malls, cloned and pushed together under a single continuous roof. That gets you close to the real number. And somewhere in the middle of all that floor space is the ocean. Before we get to the water, it helps to understand everything else stacked around it. Because the building is not just one structure with a beach inside it. It is closer to an entire indoor city. There is a shopping mall built around themed streets designed to look like a coastal town in southern Europe, complete with painted facades and arched windows dressed up like seaside shopfronts. There are office towers built directly into the outer walls of the structure, forming the perimeter that holds the whole thing up. There is an InterContinental Hotel with around 1,000 guest rooms, a large number of which have private balconies that look straight down into the center of the building, rather than out onto a street. There is a full IMAX cinema, an ice skating rink, multiple conference halls, a live theater, and enough restaurants and cafes to feed a small town. And right in the middle of all of it, taking up the entire heart of the building, is the ocean. It is officially called Paradise Island Water Park, and the scale of it matches everything else about this place. The sand alone covers around 5,000 square meters, grading down toward a wave pool the size of a small lake. On a busy weekend, roughly 6,000 people can be in the water at the same time, with thousands more moving through the surrounding shops, restaurants, and walkways. The wave pool runs on a mechanical system that pushes rolling surf up the shore on a fixed schedule, repeating every few minutes, all day, every single day of the year. A lazy river loops around the entire space, carrying inflatable rings past fake palm trees and artificial rock formations built to look like a tropical coastline. Water slides spiral down from the upper levels into the pool below, and a full-size pirate ship sits permanently anchored at one end of the beach, used as a climbing structure for kids. Above all of it hangs the artificial sun, and this is the detail that makes the whole thing feel less like a water park and more like a controlled simulation of an actual coastline. It is not just a lighting rig bolted to the ceiling. The system pairs high-output lamps with heating elements that warm the air across the entire atrium and raise the surface temperature of the sand itself, so it actually feels warm under your feet. A 150-meter-wide LED screen stretches overhead, projecting slow-moving ocean horizons and gradual sunsets across the length of the space, timed to shift gradually the way real daylight would. This detail matters more than it might seem, because Chengdu is not a sunny city. For long stretches of the year, the sky outside is gray, the air is cool, and real sunlight is genuinely hard to come by. Inside the dome of the Global Center, none of that matters. It is permanently a warm summer afternoon, rain or shine, every day of the year. Hotel guests staying in the rooms above the atrium can walk out onto their balconies and watch waves rolling in 15 floors below them, completely detached from whatever the weather is actually doing outside the building's walls. None of this happened by accident. And to understand why a city with no coastline decided to build itself an entire indoor ocean, you have to understand what Chengdu was trying to prove to the rest of the country and to the rest of the world. In the early 2000s, Chengdu already had around 10 million people living in it. But almost nobody outside China had heard of the place. Shanghai had its skyline. Beijing had the Olympics on the way. Shenzhen was the manufacturing engine of the entire country. Chengdu had a strong technology base, genuinely great food, and a reputation that mostly stayed inside the borders of Sichuan province. In 1999, the Chinese central government launched a national program called the Develop the West campaign, aimed at directing investment toward China's inland cities and pulling them up to the level of the booming coastal giants. For Chengdu, that translated into national funding, political attention, and serious pressure to expand fast. Local leadership turned that broad mandate into one very specific plan, which was to push the city south, away from its old historic center, and out into open farmland that sat beyond the existing ring roads. The man driving that southern expansion was a politician named Li Chuncheng, who served as Chengdu's deputy party secretary and later became its party chief. He wanted the new southern district to feel like a first-tier city within a single decade, and he cleared land at a pace that earned him the nickname Demolish Li, a name that was said with a kind of local pride rather than as an insult. To move at that speed, Li needed a developer who could match it. He found one in Deng Hong, a former soldier turned entrepreneur who had spent the 1990s building hotels and convention venues around Chengdu. By the early 2000s, Deng's company, the Chengdu Exhibition and Travel Group, had become the dominant private player in the city's events and hospitality business. In 2003, Deng's firm acquired a large piece of land in the new southern district at prices well below what the open market would normally support. On that land, he built the Chengdu Century City New International Convention and Exhibition Center, which opened in early 2008 and quickly became the go-to venue for major trade fairs across Western China. The project worked exactly the way it was supposed to. It pulled business travelers into the new southern district, filled hotel rooms, and gave the entire zone the kind of economic energy it had been missing. For Li, it proved that the southward push could produce a real, functioning economic engine rather than just empty new roads. For Deng, it proved that he could deliver at a scale almost no other private developer in the city could match. That success set the stage for something far bigger, and it started with a deceptively simple idea: build an indoor city. The pitch for the global center was straightforward enough to fit in a single sentence. Deng's company already controlled land directly next to the convention center, which was already drawing thousands of visitors a year, and the broader goal of making Chengdu look like Shanghai or Hong Kong was driving almost every major decision being made in the city at the time. So the plan became this: build one enormous structure, put offices, retail, a hotel, and entertainment all inside it. Make it bigger than anything standing in Shanghai or Hong Kong, build it on land that was already assembled and ready to go, and give Chengdu something it could point to on the world stage. By 2010, the foundations were being poured. The main structure topped out by late 2012, just over 2 years after construction broke ground, which is an extraordinarily fast pace for a building of this size. The design came from Shenzhen Zhongsheng architects, who built the entire exterior around a maritime theme to match the ocean that would eventually sit inside it. The roofline curves in long, sweeping arcs meant to evoke breaking waves, and the upper edges flare outward in shapes the architects compared to seagulls caught mid-flight. A massive glass dome rises over the central atrium, letting in natural daylight when the sky cooperates, and becoming the literal ceiling of the indoor sea whenever it does not. The commercial core of the building runs to roughly 400,000 square meters of retail and entertainment space spread across the lower floors, organized around themed zones, including that Mediterranean-style street built to look like a coastal village in southern Europe. Around those retail levels, roughly 700,000 square meters of office space fills out the perimeter blocks that form the building's outer walls. Moving people through a structure this large required infrastructure closer to a transport terminal than a typical shopping center. More than 240 elevators serve the various towers, hotel blocks, and retail levels. Underground parking holds at least 10,000 cars across multiple levels. A metro station connects directly into the lower floors, allowing tens of thousands of visitors a day to arrive without ever touching a surface road. Climate control for the central atrium turned out to be its own separate engineering challenge entirely. The artificial sun pushes heat and light into an airspace measured in millions of cubic meters, and at the same time, the wave pool, the lazy river, and thousands of swimmers are all pushing moisture into that exact same air. A dedicated mechanical system handles heating, cooling, and dehumidifying for the central atrium alone, completely separate from the systems running the offices and hotel rooms surrounding it. The water park added a layer of plumbing more typical of a small town than a single building. Filtration loops cycle the wave pool and the lazy river continuously, and waterproof membranes line the entire floor of the atrium, because a single leak in that system would drain straight down into the parking levels below. The building also sits in a seismically active part of the country. The 2008 Wenchuan earthquake killed nearly 90,000 people roughly 80 kilometers from Chengdu, just 2 years before construction on the global center even started. The structural design was reviewed against updated earthquake codes as a result, with the outer perimeter office blocks acting as the primary lateral support for the central atrium. Fire safety for a building capable of holding more than 100,000 people at once required extensive planning as well, with dedicated evacuation routes built throughout the entire complex. The formal opening took place on July 1, 2013. The mall sections opened. The cinema started running screenings. The water park welcomed its first ticketed visitors. The InterContinental Hotel began taking reservations. By September of that year, the building was running at close to full capacity. There was just one notable absence at the opening ceremony, and that absence happens to be the most interesting part of this entire story. The man who built it was not there. Deng Hong, the developer who conceived of and assembled the world's largest building, did not attend his own opening. He was not traveling. He was not unwell. He was in custody. In late February of 2013, just months before the Global Center opened to the public, Chinese authorities detained Deng Hong for questioning. The investigation was directly connected to Li Chuncheng, the political champion of the southward push, who had already been placed under investigation by China's Central Commission for Discipline Inspection back in December of 2012. Li was one of the first officials of his rank to fall under Xi Jinping's anti-corruption campaign, which had launched within weeks of Xi taking power in November of 2012. The investigation focused heavily on land transfers and development approvals made during Li's years running Chengdu's southern expansion. Investigators later alleged that the below-market land prices Deng had secured for the Global Center site were tied directly to bribes paid to Li and other officials in exchange for approvals and political protection. Deng's staff were simply told their chairman was unavailable. The exhibition and travel group continued preparing the building for its opening as if nothing had changed at all. The wave pool still worked. The artificial sun still came on every morning. The shop still opened on schedule. By November of 2013, the formal charges against Li were filed, including land irregularities, fake invoices, tax evasion, and loan fraud. Li Chuncheng was eventually sentenced to 13 years in prison for bribery and abuse of power. Deng's own case moved more quietly through the system, with far fewer public details ever released, and the opening ceremony went ahead regardless, smaller than originally planned, with shorter speeches and a reduced guest list. Local officials who had once posed for photos beside Deng at earlier ribbon cuttings kept a careful distance this time. His name did not appear anywhere in the official opening program. There was one other detail that almost nobody noticed at the time, and it is worth mentioning because it shows how these massive Chinese development deals are often structured behind the scenes. When the original land deal for the Global Center was put together, it came bundled with a public promise. A major cultural arts center designed by the internationally celebrated architect Zaha Hadid was planned for the plot right next door, with an art museum, a grand theater, and public exhibition space underneath a sweeping sculpted roof. That cultural center was supposed to be the civic justification for handing a private developer such favorable land terms in the first place. A developer getting access to that much commercial space at a steep discount could be defended to the public if part of the arrangement delivered something genuinely public in return. The Global Center opened exactly on schedule. The Hadid-designed cultural center did not. Its structural shell sat partly visible from the Global Center's upper floors for years, with the interior left completely untouched, while the commercial building around it raced ahead and filled up with paying tenants. The public promise quietly fell behind, and the gap between what was promised and what actually got delivered became little more than a footnote in the broader story. The Global Center itself, however, stayed open through all of it. Shops kept trading, hotel guests kept checking in, The wave pool kept running its cycles on schedule, regardless of what was happening in the courts. Management continued under interim leadership while state banks held the major outstanding loans, and Chengdu's municipal authorities watched the situation closely from the sidelines. Closing the building was never seriously on the table for anyone involved. A shuttered world record landmark sitting empty in the middle of the brand new southern district would have damaged property values across the surrounding area and signaled to the entire city that the southward expansion itself had failed. The early years after opening were genuinely uneven. The surrounding district was still filling out, and Chengdu's established retail traffic still gravitated toward the older commercial core, downtown rather than out to the new development. Some stretches of the upper retail floor struggled to draw consistent foot traffic, and a handful of tenants turned over within their very first lease terms. But the broader district kept building out around it regardless. Technology companies and regional headquarters moved into the office towers lining Tianfu Avenue. The metro network extended further south, station by station. The population living and working near the global center grew steadily, year after year, without any single dramatic turning point. By the second half of that decade, the office blocks were reporting noticeably stronger occupancy, and weekend traffic through the mall and the water park had settled into a steady, reliable rhythm. In 2016, a state-owned enterprise acquired a controlling 51% stake in the group, holding the global center and the adjacent convention complex next door. The deal moved the assets under state-linked control and effectively cleared the legal cloud that had been hanging over the original exhibition and travel group ever since Deng's arrest. In 2019, one of China's largest private property developers, Sunac China, agreed to purchase a majority stake in the global center portfolio for roughly 15 billion renminbi. Bundling the Chengdu assets together with cultural tourism and property projects spread across several other Chinese cities. The deal moved the building into one of the most aggressive private property groups in the country, right at the very peak of the sector's debt-fueled growth cycle. Within 2 years, the broader Chinese real estate market entered a sharp and very public downturn. Evergrande's default in late 2021 froze credit access across the entire industry, and Sunac came under heavy pressure from its own lenders almost immediately. In 2021, Sunac refinanced part of the global center's west wing through a trust arrangement worth roughly 8.2 billion renminbi, and the hotel asset itself was reportedly transferred through a separate debt settlement by 2024. In the span of just 6 years after opening, the world's largest building had passed from a private developer to a provincial state enterprise to one of the country's biggest private property giants. Each transaction valued the building differently, and each new owner inherited a slice of its accumulated debt. By the end of it, the financial structure sitting behind the world's largest building had become almost as intricate as the building's own ductwork and plumbing. Today, the New Century Global Center still operates day after day exactly the way it was designed to from the very beginning. It still appears in international rankings as the largest building on the planet by total floor area. The mall still trades across its many retail levels. The hotel still takes guests every night. The office blocks still house their tenants every morning. The water park still runs on schedule, opening its doors at the same time it always has. The artificial sun still holds the beach at a permanent summer afternoon, completely indifferent to the season or the weather outside. Deng Hong's name is no longer attached to the project he spent the better part of a decade assembling. Li Chuncheng served out his sentence years ago. Tianfu Avenue has since become the financial spine of a city of more than 20 million people, lined with office towers, metro lines, and sprawling tech campuses that now stretch for kilometers past the global center's glass dome. Chengdu got the indoor city it set out to build. It got its artificial coastline, and it got its fake sun. A city sitting more than 1,000 kilometers from the nearest real ocean now has its own beach running every single day of the year without exception. The building outlived the man who built it, the politician who backed it, and the legal arrangement that made the entire project possible in the first place. And it is still standing, still operating, and still pulling in crowds every single weekend. If you made it this far, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a video like this one. Drop a comment and let us know. If you had one full day inside the New Century Global Center, what would you do first? The beach, the ice rink, or something else entirely? And if you want more videos like this one, check out what's on screen right now.